the tariffs were bad, but Greenland was even worse because with Greenland it was literally, I'm just gonna threaten you until you give me land. Uh, okay, like again, I'm baffled by these moves being this dumb and this damaging because when I originally wrote the 10-year time frame, I was really thinking this bubble will burst. Probably we will have visible weakening. First off, I didn't expect them to burst right away, and I felt like a decent time frame would be something like 2 to 3 years, most likely two, but that was still going to last us until the end of 2026 or 2027, give or take. And now I'm very confident it will burst between probably, it's not likely this year, but next year is almost certain. And the real insanity, the real madness, is that I expected 10 years where you would get the bursting, the consequences of the bursting. So say it happens and I finished the book in 2025. Most of it was written in 2024. I finish in 2025. I expect the bubble to burst by, say, 2027. I felt like there would be 2 years-ish of aftershocks. So you look at the subprime crisis, which was already a terrible crisis. In 2008, it burst, obviously, and it only stopped getting worse by 2010. After that, it started piecing things back together, and by 2011, it was slowly on the way up again. Not just the housing market, but the economy at large, even though almost all of it was going to finance now. The insanity of a massive bubble, more like series, a massive series of bubbles bursting all at once will take years to process. Processed by the states, processed by the media, processed by the public, and expected that if it blows up in 2027, it will probably have consequences all the way through to 2029, possibly 2030. And then I expected that for the next 5 years, there would be every single charm attempt, every single pretend appeasement, pretend rebuilding the system, pretend fixing the problems from the Americans. I expected that from 2030 to 2035, you would get the narrative that if you just trust the Americans again, it'll get better. And the alternative was China. People don't like China. There's lots of reasons, not just American propaganda. They're an old state in every sense of the word. They're slow, bureaucratic, they're not very talkative, they're not very charming. They're just, well, very Chinese, very communist. The political culture is definitely not modern West. And like it or not, modern West is active. It's filled with characters that boast very loudly, that talk very proudly, that claim that they're going to do great and amazing things. And in every country you have that now. Every single country under American influence, you have people that act like they're the protagonists of a movie. In China, it's more like the process of 7 years at this post, and then 6 years at this post, and then 8 years at this post has successfully yielded you a grade of 5.3, which is excellent. This is why we're now allowing you the post of vice minister. And if you keep your current grades, you may become minister and then possibly premier in 15 years. Like, that's the most boring, bureaucratic, slow thing ever. That's China. So the idea that the Americans could charm people for some time and keep the Chinese rising power away for 5 years? Yeah, that seemed totally realistic. And depending on possible Chinese mistakes and problems, 10 years was not completely insane. Now, again, I was aiming for 10. I only put 15 out of pessimism. When the tariffs came, I couldn't help but have this mental image of a balloon, like a hot air balloon, that was being slowly filled with water, and that was, starting to be close to bursting. And I could not help but see the Donald's hands clasped down on the balloon and then start tightening. Because this is how the entire system works. Everybody accepts washed out dollars, everybody gets poorer, but American finance still makes it look like they can offer really good deals to you. And you end up with the, what's the word? You end up with the idea that if you give your money away to some US corporation, system, bank, whatever, you're going to make more back. So if you have somebody that starts saying, by the way, I'm shaking you down and fuck all of you, when you have a bunch of financial bubbles about to burst, or at the very least getting tight, then everything gets much worse. Everything gets massively worse. The entire system is about attracting foreigners to give money so that the Americans can stay kings and everybody else gets poor. And even that has stopped working entirely, and now it's just the 1% of elite Americans that get rich, the American people get poor, and the rest of the world gets even poorer. That's all you get. This is the end game of the American system. And then Trump comes in and says, by the way, fuck all of you. You're just going to give me money because I'm that awesome and you're all suckers. Unsurprisingly, especially with the tariffs destroying imports and the shakedowns accompanying the tariffs making it worse, this was like adding a giant bunch of pressure to everything else. I'll be completely honest, even when the tariffs came out, like, when he came out with his retardation day big board and was like 35% and 10% for the penguins and 56% for this country. And later down the day, someone found out that this was just a really basic calculation of the US deficit towards each country and a baseline of 10%. And they had a baseline of 10% on every single place in the world. And then everything above that was about trade imbalances with the US divided by 2. And they were like, that's the calculation. That's like the best your fucking administration produced. Jesus Christ. It was so dumb. It was basically saying, well, I keep buying at your supermarket and you don't buy enough back from me. So now I'm going to tax half of the deficit that I have towards you, and that'll fix it. It's so dumb. It is so stupid. And I really looked at that, and I did not even react. Like, how do you want to react to that? It's like a clown coming out and, I don't know, just coming out and juggling in the middle of the speech or something. You're not even, it was uncanny. It wasn't even stupid. It was just uncanny. Like, is this a joke? I genuinely wondered what the hell was going on. And after the thing definitively looked real, I simply came out and said, well, okay, that halves my prediction. Why? Not just because of the damage to the US economy accelerating the bursting of every bubble, but because it turned a bunch of suckers that used to obey America in every way. Because, I said the CIA controls the European elites. Yeah, but they're not telling them that their job is to destroy their home countries. They're pretending that it's a good thing. If you outright say, nah, you're just a bunch of suckers, fuck you, the natural reaction from everyone will be to think that you're the enemy. And, this relationship that you might have with someone is, you got this friend, he's kind of not financially reliable. And every time you go out together, it's like, we share. And then you end up, paying because he's your friend and you got some money, you're financially responsible, and you don't really care that much. But if you did the numbers, you'd realize that he owes you something like twice as much as he ever paid. Like, you paid over the lifetime of your friendship, you paid $4,000 in meals. He just paid $2,000, something like that. Well, what happens if that kind of relationship comes from someone that's not your friend, from someone that you identify as a stranger, or worse, an enemy? Suddenly you start counting. Suddenly you start paying attention to what he does. This is exactly what Trump did. What Trump did is that he took a rapacious relationship between the US financial system and the world and made it official. You're all bitches, and you are here to serve our superiority. Well, okay, that halved it. I went right then and there from the tariffs and his attitude. I went from 10 to 15 years down to 5 to 7. He honestly did so much in accelerating the downfall of the American empire that it's impressive. Very impressive. Literally, my Twitter is filled with messages like, thank you, Donald. Well, merci, Donald, but it's the same thing. So there is this just indisputable destruction of the US position by his actions because he made a fake friend show himself as a true enemy. And I thank him so much for that. This fat imbecile is destroying everything so fast, I honestly want to sit down and applaud, but it probably take it as a non-ironic applause, so maybe not. So yeah, that's the first prediction that I think was completely wrong. I expected a slow downfall of the American empire over a course of 10 years, and possibly worse. And instead, we're going to see a much faster downfall because he shows himself as hostile. He shows himself as an enemy. And I know that there's the same playbook. He's going to show himself as an enemy. Then they're going to put out some Democrat who will act the friend, and everything will go back to normal. I'm not sure that once the financial damage is done, you can just come back and say, please give us some money to fix it, because it's not going to be some money. The damage will be incredibly extensive. It's not going to be some money. No amount of Obama smiles, no amount of Gavin Newsom smiles are going to compensate the insane amount of money that the US system will require to sustain itself. Trump's damage is so extreme that it's going to take months of cooing, wooing, charming back the suckers. And, well, basically, I just do not see a situation where you can do it in time. You're going to have extreme pressure. And I'm imagining a scenario where Trump gets kicked out by the midterms, which is increasingly realistic. But even if after the midterms you get a Democrat, I am sorry, I do not see this happening. I do not see Gavin Newsom becoming president and he goes, everything's back to normal, we're nice again, and everything works out. I can only envision financial crisis after financial crisis after financial crisis and going to the vassals and saying, hey, please, we're your friend. I know that was Trump, but it was just him. It won't happen again, I promise you. Now you need to give me money. No, this is not a shakedown. You just need to give me money. You want to save the global financial system, don't you? We've done so much for you. I do not see, no matter how you look at it, I do not see a way in which that can end with smiles and charm. It will come down to coercion again. And I think that the coercion is just going to make everything worse. I really think that Trump has engaged the system where coercion is now official. And everyone is going to look at it with far more scrutiny than before. Everyone in the world is going to look at the US and think, are these guys anything else than scammers and thieves? And this is never going to get better now. It's the same thing as the slippery slope when you're in debt. At first you're in debt, then you roll the debt, then you roll it again and again and again and again. And everybody increasingly looks at you as someone that will never pay back. Well, I think it's going to be the Americans will never pay back what is poured into them is going to be increasingly the message that you see in the next forever now until the fall of the empire. So that's the first thing that really, really, truly has changed. My predictions were dead wrong on that. I really felt like they would keep trucking along with the let's just delay the inevitable as long as possible, what they did with Obama, what they did with Biden. But instead, no, he just went and said, no, actually, fuck all of you.